we generally have a theme here where with every episode we end up on why Bitcoin fixes this. And I think all of these discussions are interesting to me in a kind of intellectual way as somebody who studied economics, who's curious about that stuff. But dear listener, I'm sorry for scamming you into listening to all of this stuff, because if you figured out Bitcoin, you don't need to know any of that stuff. You're still going to outperform anybody who's going to, in the long run, I think. This is the tricky part. I mean, a lot of people put out all of these macro theses, and they could be right, they could be wrong. But on a 5 year to 10 year to 20 year time horizon, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to outperform Bitcoin at the end of the day. Like, it is going to ultimately, whether the Saudis or the Chinese or the Americans end up using it or not, whether we skip gold and go straight to Bitcoin is kind of immaterial, because you can just skip gold and go to Bitcoin. You can skip sovereign debt and go to Bitcoin. And as Greg Foss says it, it's a credit default swap on sovereign debt. And so if you've figured out Bitcoin, you've figured out the winning move from all of this discussion, and you don't need to bother yourself too much with the interesting questions of, is oil going to go up or is oil going to go down? Is it peak oil or peak cheap oil, or are we just going to get a lot of cheap oil? It's very interesting, but whatever happens, Bitcoin is the winning move. The ease of life that gives you, and the mental clarity that it allows you to just not have to worry about where am I going to move all of my life savings every day, and just go out there and live your life and figure out something to do to the world that's productive, so that you can earn more money and save it in Bitcoin, and have pretty high degree of confidence that you're going to pretty much outperform anybody else who's stock picking or trying any of those macro theses. I think is a very underrated feature of Bitcoin. This is something that I keep harping on about. I don't think enough Bitcoiners harp on about it. Just and I always tell people, if you're out there trading on the fiat markets, make sure you calculate your time and the cost of your time, and consider what would happen if you went and actually did your job or found another job, went out and drove an Uber or whatever, and then spent all of that time just stacking Bitcoin, and then see if you're allowed to outperform. Because the problem with trying to outperform Bitcoin with all of these theories and theses is not just that you need to outperform Bitcoin in terms of Bitcoin's performance. You need to also outperform Bitcoin considering all the time that you're going to be spending having to study all of those things, having to look at all of the central bank policies, wake up every morning and find out which side of the bed Jay Powell woke up on, and how he's going to be talking, and what the Japanese central bank is doing, what the Swiss central bank is doing, and geopolitics and war and all of these things. So that's a lot of time, and trying to figure all of this stuff out. And it's time is money. You could be earning with that stuff. You could be working as a waiter and earning money. So make sure you include that in your calculations of outperforming Bitcoin when you do.